Hi, my name is Justin. I struggle with anxiety, addiction, and anorexia. I would probably say that everything essentially started around the age of like 12 in a very it was in a way that I just didn't know what was going to be coming or what it was that was like happening. And basically, what started everything was that I went on a trip, and after we got all of those photos developed, when you still had to develop
Mm-hmm.
photos, um, I saw what I looked like, and I was like, I just had like that natural, like it is natural, but just like when you're a little chunkier, like
Mm-hmm.
here and there as a kid.
Like you didn't
And
see what you wanted to see.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it. Um and right after I saw that photo and all of the other ones, I just wanted to do something about it. And I kind of at like no cost. Like I was like, whatever it take, I don't really know. But I asked my mom if I could become vegetarian.
And this was a 12, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she was like, you're pretty young, like you're still growing, like you need the protein, like things like that,
Mm-hmm.
which now I understand. And I fought her on it for a long time, but she did end up letting me do it as long as I like had meals that consisted of some source of protein and all the other nutrients. But I actually like in hindsight, I think that that was me trying to basically diet
Right.
without it seeming like a diet.
Yeah.
It was more of just like, hey, like I don't want to eat meat anymore, like da 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 da.
And do you think that like you got that idea from somewhere or like why meat being taken out?
I definitely got just from oh gosh, what social media was even out during that
I don't even
time.
know.
I would probably say maybe like just the internet in general,
Yeah.
like hearing about being a vegetarian. And
Mm-hmm.
like I think it was around the time that a few documentaries had come out about like factory farming and all of that stuff,
Yep.
which I mean even to this day, like I genuinely like I don't agree with factory farm.
Yeah.
Like I think it's horrible, and animal cruelty and all of that. Yeah, I think I was trying to disguise like wanting to lose weight and diet, and just instead of saying that, I was just like, can I switch up like and not eat meat? And
Mm-hmm.
then she, after some time, like agreed. Did that for about I want to say like a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up losing about, I don't know the exact number, but about 20 something pounds. Um, and that got rid of I became like pretty thin at that point. Not unhealthily thin. Like I wasn't underweight yet. I it just people would say like, "Oh, like you need some meat on your bones,"
Right.
like those typical,
Mm-hmm.
But I was still eating. I didn't have like I was learning how to cook like vegetarian meals and like all of that, so it was fine, but I just was starting to develop a lot of really unhealthy habits that carry on to this day.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize it at the time.
But you weren't necessarily eating less. You just at first you just cut out the meat.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then it became dairy, and then it became, just like cutting out one thing after the
Yeah.
other. But yeah, for a while, it was I maintained it pretty well. Um, didn't drop down too low or anything like that. But yeah, I just it definitely planted the seed for like a lot of disordered eating, I would
Hmm.
say.
Did you, when you first originally lost like 20 something pounds, were you happy with the way you looked at that point?
Yeah.
But then it didn't stop there. Like you wanted like more.
Yeah,
Okay.
but and this kind of seems like it might sound weird, but I didn't at the time after I had lost that weight and felt better about myself. I wasn't actively thinking like I'm gonna lose more.
Okay.
I was just like in the mindset of like, all right, this diet is working. I'll just
Stick with it.
stick with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but after a while, after that like year and a half period, I actually went to Applebee's and I always loved their chicken tender and fry
Hmm.
basket, and I just caved one day, actually with my mom. She
Hmm.
took me
Yeah.
there. So, um,
Did that make you sick or anything?
um, it made me a little
Okay.
nauseous.
Because I was going to say, if I like don't eat fried food or something for a while and then I eat it, I get like deathly ill. Like I can't
Yeah.
handle it.
Yeah, no, I totally know what you
Hmm.
mean. Yeah. It was yeah, it like tasted so
Right. In the
good,
moment,
but
it tastes good, but the aftermath is like,
after
kill me.
I was like, "Oh,
Shouldn't
yeah."
have done
And
that.
you feel so full because it's
Hmm.
so much like, oh my gosh, yeah, it was definitely I mean, luckily I didn't get too
Yeah.
sick, but yeah, it was after that moment, I ate meat again
Okay.
regularly for a while. And that's what's interesting is that after the Applebee's incident, I don't know. But
After you decided to eat the chicken tenders.
right after I caved, yeah, I started eating kind of like normally again, and I didn't really have a whole lot of there were still some like thoughts that were unhealthy, but for the most part I would eat when I wanted to. Whenever I was hungry, I would just eat until I was full, like there were no additional thoughts.
Yeah.
It was just as simple as that. But I stayed relatively thin. So I was still having people like say, gotta put some meat on your bones,
Hmm.
like, have you eaten today? Like things like that. And I'm not gonna say that like, because I don't want to like blame anybody
Hmm.
for anything. They didn't do anything, and they didn't know. It was just I look back now and I'm like, I don't know. It's just like comments from
Right.
people like that. It can plant
It
seeds.
definitely does. I agree.
Yeah. So, and then around the time that I got back to just eating normally, um, I started having a lot of episodes of like anxiety attacks, like hypochondria. Um, I remember one summer I was probably like about to turn 13 or had just turned 13. Yeah. Around that time, I was home for the entire summer and I had like a bruise on my knee or something. And at school, we had watched some like thing where this like character gets leukemia because she notices a bruise and then has like a fever and all of this stuff. And that like I don't know. So like it did something and like gave me some idea. So when I had that bruise, it was staying for a really long time and I literally convinced myself that I had leukemia. And like I remember like one night going down to my mom and just like panicking like in front of her. I was
Yeah.
just panicking. And she was like, "You need to calm down." And
Mhm.
so I remember that being like my very first panic attack that I can remember, um, where I actually like kind of knew what was going
Yeah.
on. Um, but it was still scary because I was still so like I was so young, and I just like I knew what was going on, but I also didn't.
Right.
So it was really tough, but
It's also so confusing at that age.
right, I was really
Mhm.
confused. Like I was like, is this
Like, what's going on? What's wrong with me?
just yeah, like
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. That was the kind of when I remember all of like the anxiety really starting. I think I was always a very anxious child. Um, but as time went on, it started presenting itself more and more and in different, more intense ways.
I do feel like too, when it comes to one thing, whether it's anxiety or like an eating disorder, I do think that multiple things go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Like even how you mentioned addiction, um, having that, I feel like having an eating disorder can become an addiction in itself. It's
Hmm.
like that addiction of like wanting to look a certain way or feeling like you have to stick to a certain way of eating, or you know what I mean? And I feel like it seems like multiple things go hand in hand. I feel like it's kind of, I don't want to say rare, but I feel like it's more normal to see more than one thing than just like, oh, I just have this, or you know what I mean?
Right,
There's always like
right.
little things that trickle in with it.
It's like always a combination
Mhm.
of
Right.
something.
Well, also I
Yeah.
think if you're not eating enough or you're constantly worried about that, that's going to lead to anxiety as well, because that's going to be something
Yeah.
that's just like spiraling and circling in your mind constantly.
Yeah. If you're only focused on all of that
Mhm.
stuff, it's gonna be a bigger
Yeah.
issue. Especially because I wasn't actively trying to fix anything. I was just feeding
Mhm.
it, you know?
And so this all came from you seeing a picture of yourself and not loving it.
Yeah, like really despising how I looked at
Okay.
that age and just in those photos.
Right. Do you think
Um,
that like comparison had anything to do with it? Like, were you comparing yourself to anybody you were seeing in magazines or on TV, or do you think it really just came down to like, I don't like the way I look simply because I don't like the way I look?
I think it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
Definitely just from like TV and stuff like
Yeah.
that, I would be like, I don't look like that. But I also like, those were probably like adults that I was
Yeah.
watching, you know?
Right. Like at that age, we can't really do much. Like at that, I don't even think. I think too, it's interesting because I forget what age I started eating meat, but I didn't eat meat for a while when I was young, and I was so thin. And it wasn't until I started eating meat that I feel like my body finally kind of like went through puberty and started developing, and I got a little
Right.
bit thicker. And it's like, it's interesting because at those ages, besides eating meat or not, everybody develops at different ages. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
your body necessarily isn't going to be when you're 13.
Yeah, you're right. Like, it definitely, I feel like it can be so natural. It's a lot easier said than done, but I think it's really important to, like, looking back, I should have listened to my mom, who was saying, like, you'll grow how you're supposed to grow. Like, don't try. Why
But
are
we
you
never
trying to?
listen.
We never
No.
listen. I never
I don't think you
listen.
ever like listen or understand until you actually reach that point and it happens.
Right. Right. Everyone can be telling you
Hmm.
the the perfect thing to do. That is the right thing to do, but you're just like, but I'm gonna do it this
Yeah,
way
exactly.
and see how it
Hmm.
goes. And it's not always for the better.
No.
So, yeah, I don't know. I would just say that, yeah, around that time, like that, the anxiety from that time on just kept on getting, I was noticing it more almost. I was having more panic attacks. I was having trouble at school, like focusing, and it just a lot of other random medical like illnesses that I thought I had. Just like one week it was this, the other week it was that something
Yeah.
else. Like it was just ridiculous. And shortly after, just because I was so uncomfortable all the time, like physically and mentally, like just the symptoms of anxiety. Like for me personally, my anxiety manifests a lot more as like physical symptoms.
Same. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, like the sweaty palms and
Mine, I feel like I'm going to vomit shit and pass out and die.
that too.
Uh-huh.
That too.
It's terrible.
It's horrible. I wouldn't wish it on
No.
anybody.
And the worst part is you know it's all in your head.
Right.
Like that is the worst part.
And like speaking of it just all being in your head, like I even started thinking like, do I have some kind of like adrenal gland problem? Like do I produce too much adrenaline naturally? Because it feels like adrenaline.
Right.
Like I don't even know.
It's interesting too because I think that like when we're younger we can have like one form of anxiety or we can like you said you grew up as an anxious kid like I did too and I had anxiety symptoms that were very different than what I have now. It's almost like I got those under control and then new ones have formed as I've gotten older. So it just kind of I think that there's some people that your brain is just it's always just circling and circling. It doesn't stop. And it's almost like if it's not just in your head then it goes even further as to like causing the physical symptoms. And then it's really just like, okay, game over.
Right. At that point, it's just like, what do I do? Like, and I tried like self-regulation, like exercises, like just the whole like trying to breathe and stuff. And it's just like, it wasn't cutting it. As I'm sure you know, like it sometimes it just doesn't. Most of the time.
Yeah. I think too, if like in those moments that you have that intense anxiety, you can be breathing and then for a split second you'll feel okay and then it's right back. And then it's like, you know what I mean? It's not really like it actually gets rid of it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it too is like your environment, at least for me. Like if I'm home, I don't typically ever get anxiety. Or if I'm with my family, I don't really get it because I'm comfortable. But as soon as I'm out of my comfort zone, game over. It's bad. It's like, and I cannot get it under control.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally understand. I mean, me too.
I'd rather have like a needle that I just shoot something in my arm and I just pass out until it's gone. That's how I feel. Like, all right, I'll be back. Like it's so annoying.
Right.
It's the worst feeling.
It literally,
I get it so bad sometimes that it literally feels like I have the flu. Like I go from 0 to 100, totally fine to like, wait, maybe I have the flu because I feel so bad. And then as soon as I'm back in my comfort, it's gone. What the fuck is wrong with us?
Or like, right. I know. I'm like, why am I getting a migraine every other day or like a few times a week and throwing up from them because it's so fucking painful.
Yeah.
Like, and it all just came about like from a panic attack or a stressful day or something. It's like a residual effect, if anything. If it's not in the moment, you know?
So that was pretty bad for you when you were what, like 13?
Yeah, this is when I really started like understanding that this was anxiety. It was about 13, yeah.
And did you go to a therapist or anything, or did you get put on any type of medication, or were you really just trying to deal with it yourself?
I for the most part, trying to deal with it on my own. Like I was like, this is just how I am.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna have to learn how to manage it or live with it. But I have a vague memory of going to a therapist around that age. And I only went once. If that says anything about how well it went.
Yeah. There's many that I've only gone to once, so I get it. Yeah.
Right. It wasn't a fit. It wasn't a good fit. And I don't think I was actually ready to start diving into that, but it also wasn't 100% my choice since I was still a minor. But once that didn't work is when a lot of the self-numbing came into play. I just so like I'm in probably like 8th grade now, and that was I started using a lot of substances that just kind of just like anything. I had gotten into a new friend group, and honestly, like they were all like just involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I had access, but it started out with like smoking weed, cigarettes, um, and then it escalated to things like oh like and like let's take ecstasy, like da da da, like just it was just like, and it honestly, like I'm not gonna lie, it was fun
Right.
at most of the time. It was fun. um I just now realize how much I was really like self-medicating.
Was there, when you were taking those substances, did you find that there was a come down with any of them?
Ecstasy for sure.
Okay.
And I on like even though I had fun, there were some times where I was scared
Mm-hmm.
because I already being an anxious person and then taking something that stimulates you, it like
Too much.
too much, especially on the come down, which might sound a little weird, but it's like a lot of the jitteriness and all of that hits, for me at least, it hits during the come down. And I would be out down for like maybe like a day and a half, 2 days, just recovering from that. And then on Monday, it was back to school. Like,
Right.
just, So, yeah, I mean, it started off like just innocently enough with like just weed, and then, but yeah, and then it was like alcohol here and there whenever we could get it. We were like, whenever I could get it. And then I started drinking a lot. Now I look back and I'm like, that was a lot.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all day, every day at that time. It was just like, okay, well, we're all like hanging out. Like, I have weed. Like, let's go get a bottle and let's like take some shots, and just like, it was just having fun at the time. But to me, I was like, I'm like, it felt so much better because I was like, oh, like I could
Well,
just have
when you
fun.
drink and you, I feel like, do any type of drugs, the whole thing is you can almost forget
Yeah.
your reality of problems. I mean, even for me, like I started noticing that when I would take a shot or a couple shots before a dinner that I wasn't going to be that comfortable going to, like I wouldn't think about it as much, and the chances of me getting those panic attacks would happen less.
Right.
So it's almost like you forget about your real issues, and like your mind is taken off of it because you're drinking or because you're having fun and partying.
Right.
But I feel like a lot of times that's what it's there for. Unfortunately, not that it's a good thing, but and then you
Right.
become dependent on that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of weird because I was like, even though you feel so awful after, like whether it's ecstasy or drinking too much, like had some gnarly hangovers as
Horrible,
we
yeah.
all have. But and in that moment, I would be like, okay, I'm not gonna drink today. I'm not gonna drink for like a few days or whatever it may have been. And sometimes I like it would be fine. I would just drink like a few times a week with everybody or by myself. Like, I don't know. But um I consistently like kept smoking weed.
And
That
that's like
that
how
was
you would cope with everything that was going on at that time.
it was kind of like the main one that I
Mm-hmm.
was
Yeah.
doing. And I don't regret that. I think it can really help people personally, and I think it's a better alternative than ruining your liver and just drinking too much and being sloppy and
Yeah.
all of that. But yeah, no, it definitely helped, and it took my mind off of everything in the moment. But it all just hits you later the next day, 5 times as hard.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It started bleeding into my school. I would go to school I remember going to school on ecstasy one time, middle school, and now I look back and I'm like, that's so young, and I'm at school and it's MDMA, that's a lot, but it was what it was. Yeah, it was crazy. But at the time I was having fun while just not feeling uncomfortable all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So after that year, I started just, smoking even more and more frequently and all of that. Tried certain things here and there, other stuff, and just trying to see what I liked and what I didn't. I was experimenting and partying and having fun, and it's crazy because it kind of hit me in a way. How do I say this? I realized later on how bad it was getting, just how much I was drinking and how much I was doing other stuff. It just got so out of hand,
Mm-hmm.
and I almost didn't realize how fucked up I was all the time until I wasn't.
Did your parents realize?
There were times that I got caught with weed in my room a few times.
But you don't think they knew really the severity of...
No, they didn't know that I was using, I never got caught with the ecstasy or anything like that. I was going out to raves.
Yeah.
Just, hiding it as best as I could. But yeah, as far as I know, they didn't know all of that except for what I got caught with. When I was going to high school is when it got, over time, it got really, really bad. I hated going to school. I couldn't stand it. I didn't want to be there. I mean, a lot of people don't, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to show up. I didn't care what was happening. So I started going to school, and I would bring in, those to-go coffee cups. I would bring one of those with a little bit of whiskey, a lot of bit of whiskey, and Coke, and I would just sip it throughout the day and just be just kind of have a consistent buzz all day throughout school, get out of school, hang out with friends, smoke, all of that stuff. And yeah, it just became kind of an everyday thing of just being fucked up at school. And this was sophomore year. Yeah. And freshman year, I kind of went to school a lot more. Sophomore year, I didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
I was ditching. I lost credits because of truancy. I graduated a little late. It's just crazy to look back on. But I was just having, at the same time, I was having so much fun. So I was just like, whatever, like I'm just gonna do whatever. Like this is, I don't know. I don't know how to word it. Just being like a
Yeah.
teenager, but also trying to understand what was going on, like with the
Yeah, because you had
anxiety.
underlying things going on that were not
Yeah.
making you happy. So,
Yeah, and just the uncomfortableness in my skin, like or well, late into sophomore year, like maybe halfway in or so, I started using opioids. I started taking, first it was like codeine, like tablets, and then Lortabs, and then Percocets, and also started taking those at school and all the time. And like I remember the first time that I took a Lortab, I had no tolerance. It was my first time, but I remember the feeling because I was sitting in class. I remember the feeling. I took it on like an empty stomach, so I really felt it. But it was like I just for like the first time ever, I was like, I feel like completely normal.
and what is that exactly?
Lortab,
Yeah.
it's hydrocodone,
Okay.
so it's like right underneath Percocet, which is oxycodone.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's not like super super strong, but it's definitely effective.
Yeah.
Like people get it for like wisdom teeth surgery and
Okay.
stuff like that. But yeah, and it was literally from that point on that started the whole like crazy. I dove in really heavy into opiates and opioids. I was finding them wherever I could, mainly Percocets, but it could have been any opiate that I could get my hands on. Um, that was a pill. I don't know.
And how old were you at this point?
I
High school, right?
was, yeah, this was sophomore year, so I was about 15.
Okay.
Yeah. After sophomore year ended, I over that following summer, I is when I was introduced to heroin. It was cheaper. It was a lot stronger.
And would you say that you were doing drugs every day at this point?
Yeah. I was at least using opioids every day. And mixing it with like smoking weed and occasionally mixing it with alcohol. I shouldn't say occasionally, it was probably more than that. But drinking with them too, just to like make them feel stronger.
Yeah.
And yeah, but during like the summer right before my junior year is when I started smoking heroin, as well as they were called Roxys, but they were like, it was oxycodone without the I always mispronounce it, but like acetaminophen,
Okay, yeah.
ibuprofen,
Yeah.
because the Percocets have the oxy plus that, and if you take too many, like it really messes with like your organs and stuff. But this pill, it was just oxycodone, and you would set it on like a piece of foil and have like a straw and then smoke it the same way that you smoke heroin. So like if I didn't have heroin, I would be smoking Roxy's. I look back now and I'm like, dude, you should have just like popped the oxy. You would have felt it way more than
Mhm.
just smoking it. Um, but yeah, it was getting really crazy, like really fast. But at the same time, like I didn't want to give up that feeling. Because it felt so good. And I like hate to say that because
Yeah.
I don't want to like glamorize it at all. But yeah, it got pretty intense. And the way that that drug reacts with your body, like I was you could like take a couple hits and then you're throwing up like just over and over and over, and then you go back straight back and you take more hits and you're throwing up again and again and again. It's just like a constant. You get really hot, you get really itchy. It's you nod out like constantly, just like totally fucked up. But I think that's what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't I liked the fact that it would essentially put me to sleep while like feeling warm and just like I don't know, zero anxiety, almost zero emotion. And then that went on for a few years and it got worse and worse and worse, using more and more and more. By the time that summer ended and I was going about to go into junior year, like I went to I went to school junior year for 2 weeks. I was enrolled and showed up, I think, 5 times, split between 2 weeks. So I missed like multiple days
Mm-hmm.
both weeks, and then I was just like, I can't do this. I had to basically what was going on is like I would have to, in order just to get to school, I would have to wake up, either find heroin or smoke if I had some, because I was waking up sick. I was starting to get, well, I had been getting withdrawals whenever I didn't have anything.
And how long of not having it until withdrawal symptoms would come?
Um,
Like, was it just a day or was it longer than that?
it's typically when you first start using it, you can go longer without getting sick. At
Okay.
least for me,
Yeah.
but as it increased, I would say it would typically last like, say I took like a Percocet, I'd be good for like 7 hours.
And then you would want another one.
Yeah. Once it wore off at like the 5 hour, 6 hour mark, I would have a good like 2 hours.
And what were the withdrawal symptoms?
Ooh. Um it for me it always started with cold sweats and stomach cramps, headaches, constant throwing up. Um
But as soon as you would take another, you were
it,
fine.
it completely takes it all away. So I would basically have to like get well just to go to school. And I was like now 16. Only had been using heroin at least for like 4 months maybe. But since it's so much stronger, I would be able to go like maybe at first, like maybe like 12 hours
Mm-hmm.
and then have a few hours to find some and then be good again. But as time went on, it went all the way down to like I would smoke some and then if I like fell asleep, I would wake up sick, even if it was only a couple hours.
During that time, did you ever have thoughts of like, I want to stop so that I don't feel this way anymore? Or was that not really a thought in your head at that point?
I don't know. It's really hard because you know the answer,
Yeah.
but that solution is so incredible. Like, you just know what you're in
Yeah. And you're
for.
like already so deep in.
Yeah. And it's like you're like, oh, like basically my thought process whenever I did have that thought was like, oh shit, like if I give this up, I'm gonna have to feel like shit for at least a week. And then that's just the physical stuff. And
Right.
then after that, who knows how long the mental stuff lasts. So it's like it's tough because you know the answer and you're telling yourself just stop. Like you can just give this up and then you can like you don't have to do all of this stuff just to function,
Mm-hmm.
kind of, because I wasn't really functioning.
Right.
So yeah, I ended up dropping out of school junior year. I started doing an online program just to get like the credits done and stuff, but I went through like multiple different online schools just to like find the right one or one that I liked. Some of them were more like rigid than others, and I was like, I need something that's like a little easier because I have an addiction to maintain. Like that takes up all my time. So it was really hard to find that balance.
Yeah. So this is your junior year.
Yes.
And during this time, were you still struggling with anorexia, or was that kind of like off the table? Because I feel like you said you were throwing up a lot also through your addiction. So do you think that kind of went hand in hand, or?
It kind of did, yeah. And I wouldn't say that I was actively struggling with eating during that time, like, or eating disordered eating during that time.
But I figure too, with when you're taking drugs, you don't really get super hungry, right? Like that's not really even
right.
Okay.
And exactly, it's like I was throwing up because it makes you so nauseous, and then on top of that, I wasn't eating because it would like kill the high, and then also I was super nauseous. And so I started losing a lot of weight, and that's when I dipped to like the underweight category or whatever. I would say that's where certain behaviors like kind of came back up from
when you were younger.
When I was younger, yeah. So.
And when you say behaviors, do you mean like just certain dieting things that you would do and stuff like that?
Yeah, and like oh, like I'll eat later. Like I don't need to eat right now. Like I'm nauseous or whatever. But it wasn't to a level of like maybe I just didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
You know. So, but I would say it definitely started to kind of bubble back up at that point. I was getting comments from my family about how I looked. Not like anything mean, just like, hey, like, you doing okay? Like, you're really underweight. What's going on? But I was just like, I don't even really remember what I said, but I would just give excuses. It could be anything, like, oh, like I don't feel good, I'm too anxious, like my stomach hurts, I don't want to eat, like I'll eat later.
And do you recall at this point, were you viewing yourself as like, I like the way I look, I don't like the way I look, or was that not even a thought in your mind?
It really wasn't that much of a thought, just because
your focus was like how you were feeling.
Yeah. And I mean, my whole mindset was just, I was either high or I was needing to get high or I was sick. That was just the cycle and all that like my brain was consumed with.
And were you doing it alone a lot, or were you still in that friend group?
I would do it I would either go over to, because it wasn't like that whole specific friend group. It was like a different.
That was kind of like the introduction.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at first I would go over to a friend's house and we would smoke together all day and like put our money together to get more or whatever. And it worked in the moment because we had a place to be where like we couldn't. I mean, you know, you don't want to be doing that like at
Yeah.
a park, like at a park or something, like, or just in public. So we had a place to do it and to just be high and not out.
Was it ever hard for you to find drugs?
Yeah, sometimes. But I had like multiple,
Backups,
yeah,
connects.
like a plan
Mm-hmm.
B and
Right.
C
Like
and
I can't be feeling
D.
sick. I gotta have my people ready on standby.
Yeah, and then you start like it's just crazy the things that you do to avoid getting sick. Like I remember having like a stash of like whether it was Lortabs, Percocets, like stuff that like wouldn't even get me high anymore, but it would at least make me feel a little better if I had nothing. So yeah, it's just like it's crazy. But yeah, I did start smoking alone a lot and just like being in my room all day, getting high. Since I was doing online school too,
Yeah.
it's like I didn't really have to be anywhere. And if I did want to hang out with someone, we would be getting high together. So, and it wasn't like everyone that I was hanging out with. It was like a select, like few people that were also using it. But yeah, I started doing it alone a lot. Even on top of that, a little later, probably like end of junior year, I got this I found a tablet that I didn't know what it was. Googled the little markings on it. It turned out to be oxymorphone, which is, if you know like what Dilaudid
Yeah.
is, it's basically if like Dilaudid was Lortab,
Okay. And
oxy.
Dilaudid is like a painkiller, right?
Yeah.
I think I took that when I got my boobs done and I got deathly fucking ill.
Yeah.
I got so nauseous. I was
Yeah.
vomiting.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's that
Mm-hmm.
feeling. Um yeah, they give it to you in the they give it to a lot of people in the hospital for like
Pain or
surgeries.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like one of their go-to.
Yeah.
But oxymorphone is a step above that.
Great.
Yeah. I was like, I didn't even fucking know this
Right.
existed. Like, what is this? I was Googling, like, because the pill was weird.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like I tried to cut into it and it wasn't powder.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a really hard silicone, kind of like like my phone
Yeah.
case. Like it was hard as a rock, and I was like, "What is this?" And basically, I ended up figuring out how to take it. If so, it's weird how much I know about this, but there's something called like bioavailability when you take a drug. And from what I understand, it's how much of the drug your body absorbs. So, different routes of administration, different ways of taking it, you can get a higher percentage of bioavailability. So, I learned through my research that if you swallow it, you get about like 10% of the drug. If you snort it, you get I think it shot up to like it was in like the I could be wrong because it's been a while, but it shot up significantly. Like I think probably like 70% if I remember correctly, and then the last one would be like injecting it, which is like always 99%. Yeah, so I snorted it and
So did you had to crush it up, obviously?
yeah, literally, like it took me forever too. And this is something that where I really started using alone was doing this because they were 30 milligram pills that I would have to cut into quarters. And then I would have 4 doses of 7.5 milligrams, which was like for me the perfect dose. Anything over that, and I was throwing up consistent, like kind of
Mm-hmm.
like the Dilaudid, like
Yeah.
just horrible. It would take forever to cut it up small enough to be able to snort it, and it literally became a ritual almost. Or well, not even almost, like it became a ritual. And I don't know, that was something else. Like once I started using the oxymorphone, its brand name is Opana. I think they took it off the market if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but once I started using the Opana, it was like kind of like game changer. And I would, if I couldn't have that, then I would use heroin, and just flipping back and forth between those two. So it was just, yeah, it got insane. And that went on for another couple years doing that. And then it just strictly became the Opana, unless I couldn't find it. But that became rarer and rarer.
And besides obviously getting sick all the time, were there any other things that you noticed it was doing to your body? Like, did you have any other physical symptoms?
Mm, just ge- uh, in general, feeling very unwell.
Yeah.
And,
Like, unless you were high, you felt like shit, basically.
but I started like to look like shit, and people could tell, like, at least I think
Mm-hmm.
people could tell, like,
Like, probably what, like sunken in and stuff like that?
cheeks sunken in. I got really bad dark circles. I would have occasionally like popped, like not fully like popped blood vessels, but like my eyes always had like they were just red and irritated from throwing up all the time, and like that amount of pressure, like it just I would get headaches a lot too. I started getting a lot of migraines. And also when I felt like I was more sensitive to pain
Mm-hmm.
after a while. That's probably the other thing that I noticed the
Yeah.
most, which I forget the term for it, but it's something that like has been documented of like people that take painkillers for so long and then they're almost like they just become more sensitive to any form of pain when they like don't necessarily have either the right dose or the right drug or whatever it may be. So yeah, I don't know. The probably just those two things, but
Yeah.
just starting to look really really crappy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then one day I wasn't going to be able to find the Opana anymore. I wasn't, I was losing my connect for that. And I was like, shit, like, what am I going to do? Like, I was like, I could just go back to heroin. But this was around the time where I kind of got lucky in this way, where that's where heroin started, like fentanyl started getting put into heroin and all
Yeah.
of that, and pressed like Xanax bars and things like that. Really any pill too. Um, and so luckily I kind of dodged that, but I, yeah, so I wasn't going to be able to find the Alpana anymore. And I did pick up heroin again once I found that out. And I'm not going to say it didn't work. It still worked. I still felt it, but
Not the same.
my tolerance was completely different. Yeah. So I just didn't know what to do. And I was like, I think I need to stop. Like, I need to stop
So
all of
you made that
this.
decision on your own.
But it was out of panic.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't necessarily like, oh, this is such a terrible
Right.
lifestyle. It was more like, fuck, what am I going to do? I don't have a connect anymore. So, like, it was more in that mindset that I did this. But one night I went downstairs at my parents' house when I lived with them, and my mom was sitting on the couch downstairs just watching TV. It's like 11 at night, and um I told her everything. I was like, I need to find a Suboxone doctor and I need your help. And I was about to turn 18 at this point, or had just turned 18, because a doctor, I don't think is, at least at that time, it I don't think it was very popular to give minors or anyone under 18 Suboxone. But yeah, so I went downstairs that night and I told her everything, and
How did she react?
she handled it very well, in my opinion. She was just like, we'll do whatever it takes, and I'm proud of you for making this decision, and I'll help you. I think that she was just probably taken like
Yeah.
aback a little. I think it caught her a little off guard. I mean, I'm sure that she figured something was going on, especially towards the end,
Right.
but she never voiced it. I remember times nodding out in front of her and my dad, like talking about like how I needed to do this class or this thing or whatever. I was just out of it, and they never said anything in that moment because I don't think they knew what it even was. So yeah. But yeah, my mom handled it amazing, and very thankful for that. And I think it was like a few days later that we started looking for Suboxone doctors. And at this,
And can you explain what that is exactly?
yeah, so Suboxone is a it's a medication that is used to, it stops all withdrawal symptoms from opioids, but it doesn't get you high.
Okay.
And also
So it kind of helps like wean you off.
yeah,
Got it.
it allows you to kind of like tackle why you're using, and you don't have to feel sick.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through
Like the horrible withdrawal. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a period of time that you have to wait before you could start taking it, because there's like an interaction that can happen where if you say you like did heroin at like 10 p.m. at night, if you take it like 2 hours later, the Suboxone, or whenever you start to feel sick, you can get something called precipitated withdrawal, which is like withdrawals times like like intense withdrawals. It's horrible. And it lasts forever. Like, but yeah, so that can happen, and it happened to me. It was scary. But yeah, I ended up finding a doctor, and he was just the the best. He is the best. I still see him. Looking back, like I'm kind of proud of myself that I made that decision, even though it wasn't necessarily for the right reasons at the time.
And how long ago was that?
I This was 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then since then, have you been clean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also because, I mean, I'm sure I would have had slip-ups here and there, but the thing with Suboxone is that once you start taking it for a little bit and it builds up, if you try to take like any other opioid, you won't feel it.
Okay.
It's just,
and how long do you have to be on that for?
So it's kind of different for everyone. Some people will do like what's called an induction. They'll do an induction with a doctor in their office, and then do like a quick taper for like maybe like a couple weeks, and then other people can do it for as long as they feel they need it, and other people can be on it for years or for life. It kind of just depends on your situation, how you feel, how confident you feel in getting off of it is a really big thing. For me, at least, I haven't gotten off of it because
Since 2014. Wow.
And I've been on the same dose
Okay.
the whole time. I haven't
Do you think for you it just kind of feels like a safety net?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's like if I have it, then I'm okay. I don't have to think like,
Do you have like what would your fear be if you got off of it?
I think I would go right back to using.
Okay.
So
basically it's like the lack of confidence that you aren't ready to like not be addicted to drugs yet.
It's like the temptation.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if I would be able to like resist that. But also another layer of fear on top of that is now everything is laced.
Right.
So if I were to get off Suboxone and then try to like get high, it could go south really quick.
Right.
I could like OD just using that one time. Cause I mean, it was just different.
Yeah.
So many years ago. Like, what is that? How many years is that? Like 7? Yeah. So I don't know. It's my safety net.
Yeah.
And
it just makes you feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and it allows me to function and not have to stress about, feeling sick.
And then what about your anxiety? Were you able to get that under control kind of around that time?
So what kind of sucks is that once I became stable on Suboxone, it was a little rocky in the beginning. Once I got stable on it, I noticed that all of that anxiety was coming back mentally and physically. But like physically, it was like 10 times worse than it was. And it was just horrible. And it was all coming back because now I'm not numbing myself. And I had done that for so long. Yeah, the anxiety started coming back really bad, and I had to a a thing with being on Suboxone too is that you see a therapist to try to figure out why you use. And I I remember sitting in my first therapist's office, and we were just sitting there, and I was trying to talk to her, and I was just like shaking like uncontrollably, and she tried to like make me do like some breathing exercises, and I started shaking more and
Mhm.
hyperventilating, and I had a panic attack while trying to like I guess meditate is what she was trying to make me do. So it was that bad. Like it was really intense. And it all kind of ties back to control. Or being able to control that anxiety or control something, literally anything. I actually think that that's where a lot of the eating stuff started coming into play. I didn't know it at the time, but it's a form of control, and also a bit of it's an addiction within itself. Basically, what happened over time is that I started to avoid food. Not like a lot at first, but just like slowly. Just I ate less and didn't have an appetite. I blamed it on the anxiety again, which it is a factor, but I don't want to like discount that. But it's just I don't know. I don't even know how it got to where it did
Yeah.
so quick. But yeah, it's almost like, okay, I'm trying to get clean from substances, but I have now I'm trying to tackle all of this shit, and it was just crazy.
It was like
Um
one thing after another.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's like oh, sorry. It's like whack-a-mole. Like I'm like, okay, I got that. Okay, but now I have to deal with this,
Mhm.
and then there's this, and it's just too much. It
Right.
was it was too much. But yeah, I started having a lot of really negative eating habits, just kind of like restricting what I ate by like food categories. I never really got into, luckily, like purging or binging or anything like that. I just stopped eating. These Suboxone appointments, it ties into the Suboxone so much because at every appointment, they're monthly appointments, I get weighed. And if the doctor notices that I've lost weight, it's not a it's not good. It just doesn't go well. And I ended up getting down to like a couple years ago, got down to around like the lowest I had ever been, which was about oh, like 101, 102. At that appointment, he was like, if you go below 100 pounds, I would have to request that you be admitted to like inpatient. I've always refused to go to inpatient. It's something that scares the hell out of me. Um just cuz I don't want to be locked
Yeah.
in somewhere, well, not locked in, but like,
Then you
like
really have no control.
right.
Mhm.
It all comes back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's something that I never want to have to do.
Right.
But he was just like, and that kind of scared me when he
Mhm.
said that. Well, it scared me a lot. And I was trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? I need to gain weight. And it's not that I was afraid to gain weight. I would try, but my brain would fight me, and then I wouldn't gain the weight. If anything, I would just like kind of plateau and stay the
Yeah.
same.
And that just came from not eating.
Yeah, a lot of with the anorexia, a lot of at least like things that I do or the habits I is the restriction of like, okay, I can't eat this. I'm not going to eat that. At one time was living off of like a typical day was coffee in the morning and then nothing all day and then eating something relatively small at night. And I just went on like that for, I mean, I still do it
Yeah.
to this day. When it's bad,
Mm-hmm.
I'll still do that.
So you think you kind of go through like waves, like some days are better than other days?
Yeah, it's almost by like months
Mm-hmm.
too. Like some months or times of the year are like just worse than
Yeah.
others. Or if I'm really stressed out, I won't eat.
So basically, like, in order for you to eat more, like, it has to be like a conscious thought, like you telling yourself, I need to eat. It's not like, do you not really get hungry,
I do,
but
but
you just choose not to eat?
yeah. And that within itself is the control.
I was going to say, like, it seems like it's that control factor.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, do you think it's mainly that versus like the way that you look?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm not necessarily like afraid to gain weight. I mean, I know that I need to just to be healthier, but it's really hard because your mind like fights back against that. I could tell myself all day, okay, I need to eat. All right, let me go make something to eat. And I'll just put it off.
Yeah.
I'll just put it off and I'll put it off and I'll put it off. For some reason it's always I won't eat anything for the whole day and then I'll have something at night, maybe. But it's like little things like ramen, mashed potatoes, like rice.
But never like a full meal.
Never a full rounded meal, no. And that's been really difficult to try and change. I've seen a dietitian, nutritionist, multiple therapists. Well, all of them never specialized in eating disorders. Some of them claim to, they did not. The one that I'm with now does. So finally, like years later, I can really try to tackle it
Yeah.
with someone that knows what she's doing. But even then, it's like, even like with the whole like dietitian and seeing like all of the medical professionals, it's like they can tell you all day like what to do, but you have to actually do it.
Yeah, it's like still a battle within yourself.
Yeah, like they would tell me, like my dietitian would be like, we literally made a list for the grocery store, and it wasn't anything crazy. It was literally what I already ate. But like she was like, okay, now go to the store after this appointment.
Right.
And I never could. She told me multiple times to do that, and I never did. And because the control,
Yeah.
I've always had an issue with people telling me what to do. If someone tells me what to do, it's like
You don't want to do it.
mm-mm. Or I'll figure out another way to do it.
Yeah.
Basically, like, I guess more on the restriction to kind of explain that a little more. It's like, it's difficult because like, at least what my brain is telling me is like, you can't eat meat, like, specifically, like, red meat, no fish of any kind, Like, it's very specific, like, food groups that I just am afraid to touch. At first, I kind of cut them out willingly. I still liked eating them. Like, it still tasted good, but I was like, no, like, I'm not gonna do it. It's kind of like another form. It's a more intense form of like wanting to be a vegetarian at 12. But now it's just like, no, like, I'm not eating that, or that, or that. And it's basically all protein. I can't eat, or, like,
Don't want to.
Yeah. They're called safe foods. So, like, my safe foods are, like, the mashed potatoes and the pasta, like, a lot of just carbs.
Yeah.
And I can do, like, some vegetables and fruits and stuff like that, but I just don't take the time to prepare them into, like, a meal. It's actually, like, a lot of work. Like, that within itself is really learning how to cook again for the first time. Like, I don't remember anything from when I was younger trying to do that. Yeah. I don't know. It's cutting out a lot of the necessary things that you need to eat in order to gain weight.
Yeah, and I feel like to be healthy overall, too.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's like all of these people are telling me, like, just do this, just do this, just do this. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I get home and I'm like, no.
You can't, right? So that's still something that you struggle with to this day.
Yes. Yeah. Over the years, there's been better times and worse times, kind of just like that, up and down. But the dietitian was actually, for the first time, was like just recently this year. But I was only covered for 5 appointments with them, like through my insurance. And we tried to get more, and I got denied. So I don't see her anymore. But also, to be completely honest, I wasn't doing the work. So I'm like, when she was like, do you want me to try the prior authorization again? I was like, no, it's honestly fine. I'll figure it out. And she was like, all right, well, call me if you change your mind. Like, But it's scary because, like, I have been, a feeding tube has been put on the table if I dip below a certain amount or a certain weight, and that's terrifying. Inpatient has been on the table. I really don't want to do that. All of these things have, like, all of these, like, options have been given to me, and I either don't want them or I can't bring myself to do it.
Right.
And it's the most frustrating thing ever. Interesting, it's probably not the right word, but when I was younger, I had a friend that, like, in high school, who I met in middle school, ended up struggling with anorexia herself and ended up passing away from complications of it. I didn't fully understand what she was going through at the time. Like, she would talk to me about it, but I didn't really grasp it, or I didn't fully understand. And, like, she would wear a lot of baggy clothes, so I didn't really I could see it going from, like, her face and her neck, but I didn't know, like, how thin she had actually got. And then one day, like, I saw her, like, without, like, a coat on, and, like, it was just, like, a tank top and, like, some sweatpants. And I was like, I didn't say anything to her, but I was just, like, in my head, I was like, oh my God, like, it scared me. And I'm just like, it's weird because now I'm like, God, like, I could have, like, I don't know, maybe we could have helped each other out if we were going through it to the same degree at the same time.
Yeah. And it's almost like you've seen the negativities of it, but you still can't get yourself to do what you should be doing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, just seeing what It does, and, like,
Mhm.
I still keep in touch with her mom. I could never imagine, like, losing your child. That would be horrible, like, no matter the circumstance.
Mhm.
And to know that, like, I feel guilty because I'm doing the same thing to my family.
And I think too, it might be something where it might always linger around and be there. It might be something that you always kind of have to manage, but
Mm.
hopefully with time and with effort and therapy and whatever else, that you can get it under control a little bit better.
Yeah, I hope so. And I want to.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing. It's like I want to,
It's just
but
hard.
it's just it's like trying to change a lot of habits all at once. And you're told like just take it one step at a time, tackle one thing at a time, but it's like I don't have the energy to like physically do a whole lot. So how am I gonna start going on walks? Because I can't do heavy exercise of any kind. A, because I can't burn the calories, and B, because I could injure myself easier.
Mm-hmm.
Not to like jump around too much, but like that's almost a whole other thing in itself. The effects of it is what I'm really noticing now, and I guess have been for the past like year and a half or so. Like losing a lot of hair, my skin, it's dry, flaky, irritated, gets super red easily, like itchy, and like my skin on my like my whole body feels dry.
Yeah.
I like my joints crack a lot and they hurt a lot. My hands and my feet get tingly. Like the top of my head gets tingly. Like it's just the most insane shit to feel.
Yeah.
And to know that I'm doing that because of, the habits.
Right.
It's just, yeah. And that makes you feel even worse because you're like, fuck, I know I'm doing this to myself. I can't bring myself to turn it around. And
I almost feel like that is what addiction is.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so many people experience that in so many different types of ways.
Right. In so many different forms.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know that I can recover.
And you will.
Yeah, I will. It's just gonna take.
It takes time.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, and honestly, like I do have to put in more effort.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not doing everything I can be doing.
And hopefully you get to a point too that when you really feel ready and inclined, then you just do.
Right. And it almost just becomes like,
natural. Like it's just there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
you don't have to like force yourself to do it.
Right. Like I would love to be back at a point where I'm just eating when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Eat till I'm full, and also eat whatever I want.
Right.
And not feel like I have to cut out this or that or this or
Or
that.
restrict yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. But
well, no, I mean, like I said too, I think that, like we said, addiction comes in so many different forms. And I feel like even the fact that you're so open with the fact that it is still something that's so prevalent in your life that you are still struggling with, like there's no shame in that. You know, everybody struggles with something. And there's so many people that, whether it's eating or drugs or whatever it might be, that they probably have a struggle too that they can relate to, and they know that feeling of like, I know I should stop, but I can't get myself to do it.
Right.
So that's why I always say I think it's so important for different people to come on and explain what they're going through, because I think the interesting thing about your story is that a lot of people that have come on here, they are recovered, or they're at a place where like happy ending, they're better, you know. But with you, it's like you're still in it. And it has been a part of your life for so long, but it's still something you struggle with. But that's the reality of it. It's not always going to be a quick 1-year fix or 2-year fix. It's like it's a constant work in progress.
Right. No, exactly. It's something that I know that I think it'll always be in the back of my mind forever.
It's just about like kind of managing it better as time goes on.
Yeah, and like quieting all of those.
The noise.
Yeah. It's just figuring out it's figuring out maybe like a method that works for me.
Yep.
And also there's not a lot of people that I've found that I've met or even really seen like online or social media that openly like talks about it.
Right.
It is the same struggle between whether you're a guy or a girl or however you identify, like, but a lot of like guys just either don't struggle with it or do and don't talk about it, or they refuse to talk about it, or they're afraid to talk about it, which I understand.
But it should be brought to awareness, because the more people that talk about it, I think the more people can come together and fix it. Or at least even if it doesn't get fixed right away, to feel like you're not so alone.
Exactly. To be able to like relate to
it's that sense of like community and to feel like you're being heard and understood. For sure. And that's why I thought too this would be such an important episode, because it's something that you don't see often and that isn't talked about all the time. And even though it's there and it happens, like you said, a lot of people aren't comfortable enough to speak up and share their story and be open and vulnerable about it, because it is uncomfortable, and it is something that I feel like it almost feels easier to battle on your own than to open up and talk about it, because it's like that fear of judgment or people not understanding or whatever else comes with it. So thank you for wanting to come on and share your story. I do appreciate it so much. And you really did such a good job.
Oh, thank you.
So you should be proud of yourself.